Bear down, Chicago Bears. We got a good show for you today. Montez Sweat is keeping it real. He's keeping it 100 across the board right now. Coming out with, first of all, we're not going to lose to the Packers in 2024/2025. Second, he says that Gervon Dexter is going to have a breakout season. And who's to argue at this point? I think there's a lot going on. I'm going to tell you why the Bears are going to win 13 games in 2024. Now, you might be asking yourself, Bleeves, what exactly are you smoking? It's Illinois. I mean, I know it's legal, but why are you doing that? Well, nothing. The answer is I'm supremely confident that what they've put together is a team. And by the way, this is what they've put together, accompanied with what really is a very soft schedule that's going to put them into a situation in which, even with a rookie quarterback, which, by the way, when you look at rookie quarterback statistics, Andrew Luck in 2012 won 11 games, and that's the best rookie quarterback production in recent memory, and it looks like the Bears are primed for more. Now, the question would be, is the 2024 Chicago Bears as a team better than the 2012 Indianapolis Colts? And I think the answer to that is yes. I think that this is probably the best situation that a rookie quarterback has come into in a very long time. Not only that, but this defense is finally starting to gel. And again, I think that in my brain and in my mind, because of most of the season, I devalued Demarcus Walker, who, as I look more into his statistics, appears to have been a much better get and a much better defender towards the end of the season than what we had seen at the beginning of the season. So, still part of a great run stopping team. And the fact is, he had a couple of sacks at the end of the season. The last four games had 8 quarterback pressures, 2 sacks. He actually got after the quarterback. That's what you expect to see from a guy in that position. Now, here's the thing: if you got 8 quarterback hits and you got 2 sacks, that means 10 times in the last 4 games, 2.5 times per game, he was in that backfield. So that's actually a really good opportunity here for the Chicago Bears overall to have a fantastic year. So we're going to break that down as we can. But first and foremost, let's talk about my man, Gervon Dexter. Look, I'm not sure how this season is going to play out. I'm supremely confident that we're going to be a playoff team. And I am betting as of right now that it's going to be a 13-win season. And I know that's crazy. That's a crazy number, but you know what? I'm going to shoot for the stars. And by the way, there's no harm. There's no harm if I make the wrong guess and we win 10 or 11 and still make the playoffs. It's still a win. I'm just guessing. So there's high expectations around the Chicago Bears. There was a very strong finish to the 2023 season. Ended up going 5-3, and now really, I think we really have a top 5 defense. That's the thing. Maybe even a top 3 defense. So the potential certainly exists. I mean, consider Jalen Johnson. You got Tyreek Stevenson. You've got Jaquan Brisker, Kevin Byard. You've got Jack Sanborn. You've got Tremaine Edmonds. You got T.J. Edwards. This looks like as a backfield here. You have Kyler Gordon at nickel. So this looks like a team that can really start to make moves in the back in the secondary and stop guys and give the defensive line an opportunity to pressure the quarterback. That's been missing. I think we should all be able to agree that's been missing. One of the pieces to that, Gervon Dexter. Now, second year players start to move. They have a big curve, right? Once that curve is achieved that first year, now you know what to prepare for in the second year. So you, by proxy, become better and you've got something to work for. Now it's time to start pushing, and now it's time to start making your way in here, getting better, more instinctive, if you will, about what you're doing on the field, how you're playing. And I think that Montez Sweat says this. He says, "You're going to see, man, he's pretty good. I feel like he's just kind of unlocking himself and being himself. And I think he's going to really flourish this year. But he's a really talented kid. He's one of those quick defensive tackles and was strong as hell. It really is really a sight to see. But yeah, he's going to jump out on the scene for sure." So that's what he said, Montez Sweat, about Gervon Dexter. We selected him in the second round of 2023. And look, there was some potential. Like we saw it. It took him some time to adjust to the pros. His improvement was notable. With more reps, he totaled 20 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 12 quarterback hits, and 2 pass breakups in 17 games with 1 start. Guys, that's a that's a guy who's in your rotation as a rookie. 20 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 12 quarterback hits, 2 pass breakups in 17 games with 1 start. Those are for a rookie coming in who's not even starting. That's a pretty good first year. Not great. It's not great, but if he makes the leap that Montez Sweat seems to think this guy's capable of, this is going to be a phenomenal defense, even better than what we're expecting already. And I'll be fair, I'm expecting a much bigger result this year from this defense. I think this defense really has the opportunity to excel. They really have the opportunity to start to put people to put the players into great positions to be successful. And again, this is going to come down to Montez Sweat, and it's really going to come down to DeMarcus Walker. And I know that again, I've said this before. DeMarcus Walker, I think, underperformed, but guess what? Uh, he had a good end to the season. So if that parlays, that's a very big if. It's a very big ask. But if he parlays that into an improvement into this season by virtue of, and by the way, I do want to stress here, Montez Sweat is the guy that draws and commands the double team. So if for any reason Gervon Dexter becomes the bull that Montez Sweat is really hoping he becomes, you can no longer double team Montez Sweat because you're going to have to double team somebody like a Gervon Dexter or Andrew Billings. There are some people that are on this team right now that, in the event that they can free up that double team, then Montez Sweat becomes even better. And in the event that we saw some growth from DeMarcus Walker, I mean, maybe, just maybe, we've got this team ready and lined up and ready to go. But let's move on because very little, by the way, in the way of news. And really, we're just kind of farming at this point. we're just kind of farming Montez Sweat for comments at this point because he had he was interviewed by Chris Long a couple days ago, and we're still just kind of mining that for moments in order to make content for you guys to kind of get an idea of what is going on. Let's get in chat real quick before we move further. Bear down. We got Smoke Nomad. Very soft schedule. If we stay healthy, we'll look very scary on both sides of the ball. We just now need to find that next Devin Hester. Here's the thing. Funny thing. I think it's going to be Velus Jones Jr. again, and I know that most people aren't going to like him because there were enough low light reels for him last season. But I do want to say that towards the end of the season, even Velus Jones Jr. was not playing nearly as bad as what we saw at the beginning of the season. So maybe we'll see some improvement here. Rice Reed says we are one edge rusher away from potentially having the best defense in the league. I do agree with that. I know we're not gonna get that, or I don't think that we're gonna get that. I did go for it a couple times in drafting. I've been looking at Jared Verse. I've been looking at Dallas Turner. But I'm starting to get this feeling that the Bears are not looking in that direction, that they're going to pin it on DeMarcus Walker and say, hey, man, you make this happen, and we're going to be, I think they're putting a lot. What's going on, Iron Safe? I think they're putting a lot into him. They did very well against teams picking in the top 13. That week 18 wasn't bad. You know what? I can't get over that one. As a matter of fact, week 18 – the Green Bay game and the Cleveland game were both kind of embarrassing because of the ridiculous drops. Yeah, EV Warrior says, no way 13. I'll be happy with 9 or 10. You know what? The over-under was 8.5. So I would agree with that sentiment, except this is not the team that you're looking for. This is a team that I think is much better than what we're, like I think this team came together, and this team is going to be really good when it comes down to it. Crimson says, I'm hoping Dexter, Wright, and Stevenson take huge leaps this year. Just consider if those things happen, which they tend to do in the second year of solid players, they tend to have an enormous upsell in their performance. And if they do that, this team becomes way better than what we're currently seeing. So CEO Snow Gang says Caleb will be wearing 18. Mark my words. Keenan has already said he's not giving up 13. Yeah, I know that. We even covered that yesterday. As a matter of fact, that was our thumbnail. We put Caleb Williams in an 18 jersey because the Chicago Bears store allows you to do that so far. So we kind of all figured that out yesterday or the day before. But yeah, nobody's giving up 13, but the Bears are going to win 13 games. They're not going to start fighting over the number 13. By the way, if you didn't know, Jalen Johnson has switched from number 33 to number 1, not in honor of Justin Fields. Probably a secondary thing. He'll probably make a mention to that at some point, by the way. But the reason he did that is because that's what he wore in college. So that's why you'll see that. But moving on into different news, the Chicago Bears, yeah, absolutely. In that Peyton's number, was it 18 Peyton Manning as well? Chicago Bears are trying to get some money back from Arlington Heights. The team is appealing its property tax bill in Arlington Heights, seeking a refund of 2023 taxes of $7.2 million for the site where the Bears proposed building a new stadium. They filed paperwork earlier this month with the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board. Last month, the Bears announced they would invest over $2 billion in a new lakefront stadium instead of the proposed Arlington Heights location due to rising development costs, and have improved relations with city leaders. Remember, the former mayor of Chicago, Beetlejuice, what was her name? The Lori Lightfoot, I think, something like that. She was very cantankerous in her dealings with the Chicago Bears. And, when given an opportunity to make a statement and give support to the Chicago Bears, she was like, win more games. That was not a great look. But now Brandon Johnson's in charge, and things are a little bit different now, and they are way more receptive to, they're way more receptive to. But anyway, the team still owns the site at the Arlington International Racecourse, where they are considering building a stadium. So looking like, and I imagine they're probably going to get some of it, because the reason that you hire attorneys to appeal all of this stuff is because you tend to have big wins when you do that. So I got a feeling that the Bears are probably going to save themselves 7.2. Unfortunately, it's not going to go towards the salary cap. In fact, the most likely scenario for that is it's going to go into the pockets of the McCaskies, because that's how we do, son, or something like that. I read that somewhere. Now, let's get into the main story here, why the Chicago Bears are going to win 13 games in 2024. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. There's no magic to this. It's very simple. It's a very simple thing that I'm giving you. I'm going to break down these games. Now, I don't know where the games are going to be. There's pieces that are not going to fit right. There's momentum. There's, problem situations there. There's definitely going to be some moments there, I think, where we feel like maybe we should have won, and did, there's going to be something that comes up. I understand that along the way, but I don't think that it's going to be nearly as complicated, and I don't think that we're going to have a problem. Let me just say that I am under the impression, and I get the feeling, that we are going to have a fantastic year. Okay, so I'm just going to say that and leave it there. And I'm going to tell you why they win 13 games. By the way, do you like the new font? The new font down at the bottom? It sure looks prettier than it did before. I've got multicolored and stuff like that. But this is the schedule. This is the way it looks. And listen, in Chicago, I don't think the Bears go undefeated. I am actually giving it that Montez Sweat is not correct, that the Chicago Bears are going to lose both times to Green Bay. I'm actually disagreeing with that. And by the way, there are a ton of this shit is on the wall in Green Bay already. Okay. In fact, most of the rags for Green Bay. And by the way, it's easy if you ever want to read some of the Chicago news media, it's easy to read. They're all written in crayon, so very simple read. And they don't use multisyllabic words, so you're good to go there. But they've got this on the board already, so that might be a big ask. But I mean, look at this, guys. We're looking at Detroit. And first of all, I'm going to tell you right now, Detroit is getting swept, and the Vikings are getting swept. And I'm telling you right now, that's 4 wins right there. Now, taking that apart, then we're looking at the rest of the league. We're looking at LA. Can the Bears beat the Rams? Well, you know, that's going to be a big ask. So I'm going to say no. And then the Seattle Seahawks. Can the Bears beat the Seattle Seahawks? Absolutely. They can annihilate the Seahawks. How about the Carolina Panthers? Moving down. Yes, absolutely. What about the Jacksonville Jaguars? Of course. What about the Tennessee Titans? Absolutely. What about the Green Bay, the New England Patriots? 100%. Like each one of these, if you go through here, this really looks like a 7-2 homestand for the year. Could it be better? 100% could be better. But this is 7-2 at home, meaning that you have to win 6 games on the road. I already gave you 2 games. I already told you we're going to win in Detroit. We're going to win in Minnesota. So now what we have to do is we have to come up with 4 more wins out of Arizona, San Francisco, Washington, Texas, and Indianapolis. Now, let's break this down. Arizona, horrible. And we're better. They're not at this point. San Francisco, that's a Super Bowl contender. We might struggle a little bit with that. So let me just say the losses at this point in my brain, that the obvious losses here are the LA Rams, the San Francisco 49ers, and 2 against the Green Bay Packers. And I do think that the Bears, by the way, are a better team than the Green Bay Packers. I actually think that that's the case now, that we're getting to that point where the Bears have consistently improved enough that the Green Bay Packers are no longer the threat, if you will, that they were before. I already know that, and I acknowledge that, but we've given them fuel for the fire, and they're still going to be a good team. So we're going to take those as L's, right? So LA, Green Bay, San Francisco. The rest of them, point out a game that's not going to be winnable. We have favorable matchups with Washington, Indianapolis, and the Houston Texans. And maybe you say the Houston Texans have C.J. Stroud. Does he make that big leap into his second year, like we're hoping that Darnell Wright makes, that Gervon Dexter makes, that Tyreek Stevenson makes? Are we looking for that same sort of leap, and will that leap matter to him? Well, that might be the 12-5 win instead of 13-4, because they've also made a few significant moves, but they've lost a few people on their defense, which I don't know if that makes them better or not. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not tuned into what's going on in Houston with the Texans right now. CJ Stroud ended up in a favorable situation. Can he maintain that favorable situation? I don't know that that's the case. I don't know that he can. So there it is. I mean, guys, I think that this is, look, wins 7-2 at home, and then 6-2 on the road. Right there. And by the way, look, there's plenty of opportunity to have mistakes. There's plenty of, can Tennessee come in and just steal one, or can Jacksonville come in and just steal one? Sure. And that makes it a 6-3. So 13 wins, maybe 12 wins, maybe 11 wins. But I mean, look, the other upside to it, and James Ruleford just took you just took my line here. If in the event that something like that were to happen, then I still think that we have a good shot against Green Bay. I'm going to point to that last game of the season. I'm going to point to the problems with the last game of the season. I'm going to point that the Bears held the Green Bay Packers to 17 points in the final game, even though we only had 3 field goals. I'm going to point that out, and then I'm going to say I think Caleb Williams represents a paradigm shift in scoring that we didn't see from Justin Fields. And again, no offense to Justin Fields, I would still prefer, if it were mine, I would still be holding on to Justin Fields as my quarterback. So, I'm not saying that we're just light years better, but we're different. This is a different team, even with the coaching, et cetera, et cetera. But Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett, the improvement on the team for the young players. Forget first year players. Imagine the second and third year players getting just a tiny bit better. If all those pieces fall into place, and if Jalen Johnson lives up to his hype, we just paid him a bunch of money. If he lives up to the hype, all these pieces are in place for this type of run. So we split with Green Bay. That gives us back those, that win we're looking for. Guys, it is not that far. And look, I know it's wild pie in the sky stuff, but we're not that far away from being a 13-win team. Just consider we lost games that we should have won last year. We lost games that we had, like the Bears um, found ways to lose last year. Okay. And if we look at it, just in this context, I'm going to pull it up on stage here. So, grant me this, if you will. But in the preseason, we had this blah, 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 blah. So first game up was the Packers, right? We lost 38-20, probably no chance to change that one, right? But we could have probably done a little bit better against the Buccaneers. I think that was I don't even know if that was a winnable game. Let's just keep that off the table. But the Chiefs, 41-10, probably didn't have a good shot there either. The Broncos, 31-28. Guys, we should have won against the Broncos. We absolutely should have won against the Broncos. Then you move on to the Bears taking on the Commanders. That's where we got our first win. Now we're 1-4. Maybe should have been 2-3 at that point. Let's just say that should have been 2-3 at that point. Then we lose to the Vikings. That's where we get injured. That's where Justin Fields gets injured, comes out of the game. Tyson Bagent does not take us into the promised land. We had an opportunity to win that game. So with the opportunity to win the game, not winning it, we're within 6 points. It's a touchdown away. So, just consider if that were a win at that point, now we're 3-3 instead of 1-5 at that point. Just with a small change in those two victories, now we're a 3-3 team. That's two more wins. That takes a 7-win team to a 9-win team. Now, obviously, we beat the shit out of the Raiders. The Chargers came back, annihilated us, but we had a shot here with the Saints. We had an opportunity with the Saints. We were within a touchdown. So if we can reverse that one, then there's another win right there. That puts us in a situation in which instead of a 9-win team, now we're a 10-win team. And then the Bears beat the Panthers, and then we lose to the Lions, down up 12 points with 4 minutes and 54 seconds left in the game. The win was there for us. Like, we had this one in the bag, literally, and screwed it up. But that's win number 11 right there, right? And this is a bad team. That's bad. That's a bad one, right? And then the Bears, we come in and we go into Minnesota and beat the Vikings, and then we annihilate the Lions, and then we lose to the Browns. 2 big drops. Remember Robert Tonyan and remember Darnell Mooney. 2 big drops that we should have caught. We should have had those. Then we go in and just run over the Cardinals, run over the Falcons, and then we lose to the Green Bay Packers. But again, 12-win team. That's and the question is, and Crimson right here is asking the right question. How likely is it they lose games they should win next season? It's not nearly as likely as it was this season. Remember, this team was not prepared. This team was not ready to perform, and it showed. Like we did not have. It was not a. This was not a great result. Okay, there were wins that we left on the table. We had no business losing, not to the Cleveland Browns. Look, number 1 defense, sure. I'll grant you that this was a good defensive team, but we shouldn't have lost. We were a better team on that field that day. We were a better team on the field against the Detroit Lions in Detroit. We were a better team. You take those 2 right there. Again, 7-10 becomes 9-8. And then just one more win along the way makes it a 10-7 team. Like, that's how close this team really was. When you take a deep breath and start to break down like what this team looks like, this team was far better than what the result is on the field. And then it started to show at the end of the season. again, there's a lot of young players. There's a lot of problem that's still out there that had to be addressed. A lot of it, just being part of being a what do you call it? A team on the come up, I guess. You know what I mean? So do Bears beat teams picking in the top 13 this draft? There's no reason they should be losing to look, the Bears are set up. I mean, let's I suppose I suppose the best thing to do would be to bring this back up and break this down. Like this is the defensive roster. This is what we're dealing with this year. Now, you cannot like DeMarcus Walker in that edge rusher position. But again, I will then say if you have 8 quarterback pressures, 2 sacks, and you had actually become a force. We didn't notice it, by the way. We didn't see it as fans. We're looking for something. Well, we're looking for a miracle, I guess, at that point. But let's just consider that DeMarcus Walker started to really play his best football towards the end of last season. If, and it's a big if that carries over, this team is phenomenally better because you've got Jaquan Brisker, you've got Tyreek Stevenson, you've got Jalen Johnson. All should be improved. Now, the question with Jalen Johnson is he'll be playing for a long-term contract. He took a 4-year deal, so he's got another big deal in the cards if he continues to perform. But it should be noted, Eddie Jackson got a big deal from us, and guess what? He immediately fell off. So the question is, can Jalen Johnson continue to perform the way that he's been performing? We have no reason to think that he won't. But we also, in the event that we have a problem, Terrell Smith and Kyler Gordon are ready to step in and just go ham on that position. We have some really good up and coming cornerbacks that are going to make. And by the way, Jalen Johnson might be the best in the league, but these guys are still really good. So if we get put in that situation where he fails to live up to those expectations, then boom, you know what I mean? And Antmus says you can put some of those losses on Getsy with all those telegraph or screenplays. I don't even know what to say at this point. Luke Getsy was entirely predictable, but I don't think he was as horrible as we really like. We're not gonna remember him well, but there was obviously something that the Raiders saw because they snapped him up right away. They were not concerned with what we had. They were. And by the way, a lot of this comes back. We do have to be honest, and we do have to say Justin Fields has some blame to share in this regard. Justin Fields did us no service with his performance as well. And I will still continue to support anybody who chalks some of that up to Luke Getsy, because I firmly believe Luke Getsy was a problem, a big problem for this team. But I mean, you still have to execute when it comes down to it. Like, what are we really trying to do there? You know what I mean? So I think that, and no, they're not known for making sound decisions, but they're also we're also thinking about the Al Davis level of insanity that they brought. So I don't think that this is the team that this is not the problem team. I'll just put it that way. This is not the problem team that we had before. This is a much better team. That's all I'll say. This is a much better team than what we've seen. So if DeMarcus Walker lives up to the hype in any way, in any small way, then boom. Are you interested in trading a first and second and third next year to move into the top 5 to 8 range this year to give us 3 picks in the top? I would love to see something like that happen. I just don't. That's not good for the team. What that would be good for the here and now. So, but the question to that would not be as open as you make it. First of all, if you can take Caleb Williams, sure, you've got your quarterback, presumably of the future. You've got your quarterback. But you would have to, in that area, you'd have to be able to pick up Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors and Joe Alt, let's say, for that to really be a payoff. Or you could let's just assume that Braxton Jones can handle his business because let's face it, I still like Jackson. even if Crimson himself does not like Braxton Jones and would like to see an upgrade there, I would still like to, I would still like to see Braxton Jones get better and perform. It is entirely possible that Braxton Jones comes along and that this is a much better team without making that move. Now, if that is the case, then you still have Caleb Williams, and then let's say you take Dallas Turner and Marvin Harrison Jr. Um, or Malik Neighbors or even Roma Dunze. If you could pick up your edge rusher of the future, your quarterback of the future, and a wide receiver of the future, just assuming at this point that we're not going to pay Keenan Allen type money. So if that were the case, it would be worth it. Now, the problem with anything like that is that now the cupboard is bare. You have to win now or your team is devastated. So if that's the case, then I'm not sure I like it. So that's my opinion. That's what I think. Now, on the offensive roster, we still don't have an answer. Tyler Scott, I mean, look, I'm sleeping on Tyler Scott at this point. I hope that he shows up in a big way, and I hope that he becomes that guy because if in fact he does, then this team is suddenly just way better. Like I would think that this team is just a way better team with Tyler Scott performing at a high level. And the question is going to be, can we get that out of him? So, you know what I mean? It might possibly be something like that. So, yes, there's. I really like the way we're lined up now. Center, I do recognize that Coleman Shelton, Ryan Bates, they're probably more backups than they are starters in the league, but they're better than Lucas Patrick or Dan Feeney. I mean, let's consider here. None of these guys are signed, right? The guys that are signed should be better than the guys that are not signed just by virtue of the eye test. And everybody else in the league is looking at Lucas Patrick and they're like, nah, Dan Feeney, like, nah. They're still looking at all these play. There's plenty of players out there that still just do not have jobs. So, you know what I mean? So let's see what happens. I mean, again, if you apply the same logic that I'm using with Darnell Wright, with Tyreek Stevenson, if you apply that same rookie logic and that big time leap, then maybe Tyler Scott ends up being that slot guy that we've been looking for all this time. And also because I want to say Luke Getsy, but I should say Luke Getsy and Justin Fields not being here is probably going to give him a lot of upside momentum. Now, I say that knowing that I've drafted Roman Wilson. I say that knowing that I've drafted every wide receiver I can possibly draft to try to get away from Tyler Scott. But again, maybe I'm sleeping on him, and maybe the Bears even recognize that. So we'll see what they do. I'm intrigued. I'm certainly interested in what move they're gonna make. So but also, let's get into the X because heard it on the X. And guys, I got to tell you, Emmanuel Acho does not disappoint. He says, I believe Caleb Williams will lead the new look Chicago Bears to the playoffs in year one. DJ Moore, plus Keenan Allen, plus DeAndre Swift, plus top 5 scoring defense after acquiring Montez Sweat. Caleb Williams is generational, and the Bears have now set him up perfectly. And look, there's a lot of loud people out there who are talking about Caleb Williams being that generational guy. Is he? I don't know. I don't agree with that, but um, I hope that he is because he's coming to the Chicago Bears. So LFG baby, let's go. So if he is that guy, if he's that generational talent, if we're lucky enough that that is the case, then this is going to be a phenomenal team. If he's just pretty good, we're still going to be a 13-win team. If he's not that good and he goes through a lot of rookie struggles, and it should be fair to note that he's going to go through some struggles. Do you know why? Because he's only played 13 games. The Bears are playing 17-game seasons, so a lot of rookies do hit that wall going towards that season because look, you're playing against the best of the best every single week. You don't have a week off anymore in the NFL. You take a week off in the NFL and you lose that game. I'm going to rely on Matt Eberflus to be able to keep people motivated and focused on that and reminding people of that. If you take a week off, you're going to lose. So if everybody doesn't take any weeks off and there's no time down, then this team is fantastic. And Emmanuel Acho is pointing it out for you right now. And then finally, Clay Harbor brings up an interesting guy. I did not think about this one. Roman Wilson was my guy, but Pro Football Focus has Cornelius Johnson, the wide receiver from Michigan, as a perfect day 3 fit for the Bears. And if they don't draft Rome Odunze, I agree. He lacked great production, but he's big at 6'3", 215, fast at 4.43, and explosive with a 37-inch vertical and a 10 feet 7-inch broad jump. So athletically speaking, this could be one of those guys. Now, let me just say that, when I look at situations like this, that is nerd stuff. And I'm good at nerd stuff. But the nerd stuff says that that you look at these specific tools, right? Can he play football? That's the question. So those are the things that we're looking at right now in the highlight reel. Can this guy play football? And it really looks like he can play football. He can make the plays, he can make the catches, look at this, the elusiveness that he shows. That's actually pretty good. The question is right now, could he do that on all plays? I mean, that's the question, right? Can he do that every single time? So if he can, then then this is a great option. If we don't have Roma Dunze, if we don't have a trade up for somebody else, so there you have. That's a great opportunity. So now let's finish this off with my draft for the day. My draft for the day was quite simple, actually. I took Caleb Williams at number 9. Joe Alt was still available, so I took Joe Alt. Why did I take Joe Alt? Well, I did it. I did it for you, Lord Crimson. I did it for you. And then at number 76, that was when I first traded down. And when I traded down the number 75 for the number 76 and the number 136. So I traded down one spot on 75 to 76, and I took Michael Hall Jr. so that we have a new defensive tackle. We do need, I still think, some more potential at the defensive tackle position. And then at number 122, I took tight end Cade Stover. Not really what I would have liked to have done, but it was the best player available at number 122. So that's the guy that I went with. Gerald Everett, not going to be here forever. So I think it would be good to have somebody who could learn from somebody like Gerald Everett. So, you take that for what you will. And then number 136, I took Jalix Hunt, the edge rusher from Houston Christian. If he's any good at all, then he starts to come in on obvious passing downs, maybe, and spell DeMarcus Walker in those situations. And maybe he's a good run stopper too. So, maybe he's a good relief guy. So, we'll see what happens with that. So there we are. That's the show, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you. Guys, the important thing is this: the Bears, 13 games this season, we are going to annihilate somebody. This is, this is not going to be the greatest team that you've ever seen. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have moments where we just don't do a good job. We're going to have those moments where you're just like, oh. But we're going to be competitive in every single game. We're going to be competitive all of the time. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, every one of these games are going to be winnable, and that's the most important part to anything that we do, is being able to play and being able to have this team perform at a high level. That's coaching. Do we have the coaches in place? I tend to think, from everything I keep reading about these guys, that this team is ready and primed for a significant upgrade, that people are going to be afraid of playing the Chicago Bears. So Green Bay, probably not until we knock them up, not until we knock their teeth out. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to have to win some games consistently against Green Bay before that kind of flips. And I know nobody wants to hear that, but we flip those, we break a few teeth there, and guess what? Now all of a sudden, the Chicago Bears are the big kids on the block. Really comes down to Caleb Williams. How well does Caleb Williams perform? Do these free agents really mesh in well with what Shane Waldron wants to do? There are some questions that we're going to have answered, and hopefully they'll be answered very, very quickly and very, very positively. Can't wait to see how it gets when we get into when we get. I assume at this point Caleb Williams. No reason to think any otherwise. But as soon as we get Caleb Williams locked in, as soon as we get him into position, as soon as we get him doing his thing and getting up to speed on what needs to be done here as a team, then party on Wayne, party on Garth. Aren't they from Chicago? Yeah, they are. So party on Wayne, party on Garth. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you. Bear down, and we will talk to you again on Monday. Guys, have a good weekend, and we are about 2 weeks away from the draft. So get excited because it's all about to change. You guys have a good day.